Well, Joe, I appreciate you being on the call today. I want to let everybody know that we've got Joe Mediga, the founder of Avion Energy, here on the phone with us today, talking about the BIDPOINT sales channel. And I'm going to reel this back a little bit because Joe and I have spent some time in networking functions over the years. And with leads clubs and networking clubs, now you've got things like BNI and Power Core, and it might even be, focus groups within chambers and that kind of thing. And we really feel like with the explosion of social media and just the internet in general, that some of that face-to-face, action that really helps you hone your craft and make those deeper connections, because this is an influence business more than anything else, that it's just so perfect for BIDPOINT, and especially, with commercial energy and now waste and recycling and a third vertical coming shortly, and all of these being kind of B2B offerings. It's just a super easy conversation to have in some of these networking environments. And we were having a strategy meeting with Avion a couple of weeks ago to kind of launch the year, and I thought to myself, a lot of what's going on here in this very successful company has come from, networking events. And, Joe made a point, during the course of our conversation about having this call, is that, it's not just the network in itself. It makes you better about having conversations about our offerings and about our business. So all I wanted to really do today, Joe, is kind of throw that back and forth and kind of give some examples about how that works and encourage people to go out and look for, whether it's BNI or Power Core or even meetup groups, and there's some other things that are out there. There's a lot of ways to get out there and make some great connections and also hone your craft. So,
sure.
Got some thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Yeah, Rick, thanks. And thanks again for having me on the call. The whole idea of networking, the power of it is that it really creates value in all different ways. I don't care who you are, what you do, what you're out and trying to do on a daily basis. The more you do anything, I don't care if you're a basketball player or a pitcher or a salesman, the more you do it, the better you become. I mean, it just is. There's no mistake that the best of the best are the ones that work the hardest and do whatever it is they're trying to accomplish the most. Well, in our world, in the business world, and in BIDPOINT's world, you've got multiple conversations now that you can have on a daily basis, hopefully, that is going to advance your personal financial goals. And, trying and really focusing on creating environments where you can have more conversations, easier conversations, is just a very powerful and very effective way of attaining your goals. And, in the BIDPOINT world, there's three conversations, soon to be four, but three major conversations, and that's about a business op. It's about energy and the supply side of natural gas and electricity, and it's about waste and recycling. And now the question is, who do you say it to and how do you say it? And really the ultimate question that somebody needs to be asking themselves, how do I accomplish my financial goal, whatever that is? And the truth is, it's all based on numbers, and it just is. And, as you and I have said years ago, and we were taught years ago, you have 5 conversations about your craft on a daily basis and do that 5 days a week. By the end of a first year or a second year, whatever your goal is, the likelihood of you reaching it is very strong. And, I can remember you and I used to sit there and ask the questions and say, oh, yeah, sure, no problem. But how would you ever create an environment where you could have conversations every day? And hence networking groups. And, from my experience, and, I've got a unique experience in it. I actually ran one of those organizations for almost 10 years. But what I saw is that individuals that would get involved with all of the major brands out there, they're all good. But what it does is it creates an environment where individuals, in a lot of them, they're unique category clubs. In other words, there's one person per business in the club itself, and that's what you're looking for. You're not looking for competition on your service. And then on a weekly basis, as you get together, you have the opportunity to not only practice your elevator speech, as we talk about, a 30-second or a 60-second message about your service in front of professionals who want you to be successful because you want them to help you and they want you to help them build and grow their business through referrals. But it also, just through the repetitive nature of talking about it and the focused conversation about talking about it, you just get better. And we would see people that would just really explode their business because of the number of conversations they were having. So it's very effective. And I can share some other things. But Rick, you have any other specific questions you want me to answer on that topic?
Well, I guess something that might be applicable, and I know you probably haven't had time to even think about it, but I mean, what would you say? I mean, we haven't even talked about this, and maybe we're actually creating something as we talk about it, but if we were going to go out there and be in a networking group and describe, what BidPoint was right now, how would we describe it?
Yeah, and I'm glad you made that question because that's exactly where I was going. The truth of the matter is what you want to do on a daily basis is you want to create an environment where you're causing conversation. And what you want to create and craft in your own words is a conversation, is a statement or two, which causes conversation. And let me tell you a quick story. I was a business coach for many years, and I only dealt with six-figure earners or above because I wasn't the type of guy who wanted to create an environment of, talking to entrepreneurs that were struggling. I wanted to talk with entrepreneurs that were six-figure earners and for some reason couldn't hit the glass. They kept hitting the glass ceiling to go to seven figures, that type of personality. And to the person, it was never about their work ethic keeping them back or working hard or not working hard. It was about two different things, and it happened every time. It was about how did they find more people to talk with, okay, and how could they craft those conversations to where once they started a conversation, it wasn't a short-lived relationship. In other words, if you're a door knocker and you go to somebody's door and that you say, hey, do you want to buy my vacuum cleaner, and they say no, now what? You go to the next door, right? The relationship was cut short. But if you go to somebody's door and you say, hey, do you know anybody who wants to buy a vacuum cleaner? What does somebody say? Sometimes they say no, but a lot of times it's an open-ended question. So what I did with several different people, and there's one person in particular, his name was Steve, and we worked together for 9 months, and he was in another company, a financial company that had a large network. He had a huge business, but he had a huge personal book, but no availability of creating a team. He just didn't know how to do that. And he hit that $150,000, $180,000 a year mark, which is successful, but he could never get beyond it. And so we would listen, and I would listen to what he would say to people. And every time he had a conversation, Rick, he would move it to the person, John Smith, and he would say, okay, John, do you think you need my services? Well, when John said no, the conversation was over. And as soon as John said no, you're either backpedaling, you're selling, or you're pressuring John in the interaction. So what I taught Steve was never create a conversation where the end result for the consumer is based on a yes or no answer. Always create the conversation to where the consumer has to think about more of a who do you know rather than a do you need my service. So if I was in a networking group today, which, we've talked about it, if I was in a networking group today, what I would be telling people is, if I was building a BidPoint business today, I would be doing two things. I would be joining a networking group because then I automatically have 20 or 30 people to talk with. But the value, Rick, is not in those 20 or 30 people using your service. Every person in that business meeting, all 20 of them, know 50 people that could possibly use your service. Now the question is, when you're standing there in that meeting, it's not how do you get the 20 to use it. It's how do you tap into the 1,000 people that they know. 20 people times the 50. And really what you want to do in what you're saying to people is this. Hey, listen, I'm in this new business. We market to incredible services. Every business in business needs what we need, what we have. Who do you know that might be interested in saving money on natural gas, electricity, and or waste and recycle? Who do you know that owns a business? Who do you know that likes to overpay? So you're asking the who do you know question, even if the person you're sitting in front of, you know for a fact, owns 16 restaurants and 12 hotels, which would be perfect clients for what we do. Even if you know for a fact they have that, you don't want to ask them for their business, because if they say no, then you're done. But if you say, who do you know, if they're any type of entrepreneur, they're going to say, well, I don't know, why? What do you got? What do you do? What do you guys do? And that's what causes the conversation. And then you're in a conversation mode. You're not in a questioning mode anymore. You're in a conversation. You're not pitching them. You're educating them. And what you're really wanting to do, and this is, people have asked me, 1,000 times for 7 years, like, how does your system, how are you so successful? Well, really, why we're so successful, Rick, is that we've created such a win-win that whenever a consumer, a decision maker, takes the time to be educated about our service, they always say yes. The challenge is, how do you get the consumer to listen long enough, to sit back with no protectors, none of this, I'm going to be sold mentality. How do you get the consumer to sit back and listen long enough to where it sparks their interest? Well, the way you do that is you're not selling them on them. You're talking about somebody else, and you keep it open-ended that way. And I've had huge success doing that over the years. And the truth of the matter is, as you're telling the end consumer about the service, natural gas, electricity, best pricing, trash and recycling, best pricing, free, blah, 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 all of the bullet points of what we do, they are going to be more interested in, you actually doing it for them as they've heard the results, as they've been educated on the process. So if I'm a person out there, what I'm asking in those types of groups is, who do you know that owns a business? Who do you know that would like to save some money? Who do you know that loves being overcharged? That's kind of the funny one out there. No one likes to be overcharged. And that's what I'd be asking them. So, and I have one other point I want to get to, but any other questions on that, Rick, you could kind of think of, that you kind of answer that I might be missing?
No, you're right there. That's, like I say, that you led into the 8-second question that we have on the blog and everywhere else. It's such a brilliant question,
Yeah. And I can tell you the other way that this gentleman, because he went from, and this is a company with about 35 or 40,000 field agents out doing financial services. He went from in the top 500 to in the top 11 with this company doing this next activity. And what he and I would do on a daily basis, because he was a guy that could and did, it was his full-time job. And what was his full-time job? All he had to do is make 5 new contacts a day. 5. Now, if that's all you're doing all day, you would think, oh, anybody can do that. The challenge was where he kept hitting that brick wall, and it was so simple. He paid me a lot of money to teach him this, I have to say. And he's a good friend today, Steve is. But what would happen is, if you're out there every day, day in, day out, asking yes or no questions, 99% of everyone's going to tell you no. And I don't care who you are, Rick. If you have 5 people tell you no out of 6, or 50 people tell you no out of 60, eventually those no's beat you up. They just absolutely beat you up. So what I did with Steve, instead of, he still was contacting 5 people a day, but what we did is we changed the language. We changed what he was asking people. And what we did was, instead of him asking 5 brand new prospects, hey, do you want to use my financial services, which everybody told him no, every once in a while, 1 out of 100, he would ask the question 5 different times. Who do you know that might need my service? Who do you know that might want to make some money? He changed his questioning to his cold market. And then what we did, whether somebody said yes or no, I don't know anybody, we would never let somebody get off the phone without us being in control of it, So what we would do is we would say, okay, Mr. Smith, you know what? I can tell that you're thinking for me, and I really appreciate it. Do you mind if I call you back in a month or so and just see if you've thought of anybody? So what Steve's goal was on a daily basis and then on a monthly basis, and this technique is a little bit more for the person that really wants to get 6 figures in BidPoint. But what we did with Steve is he created a list, and our objective on a monthly basis was for him to add 10 or 15 or 20 people to his list that were willing to refer him to somebody else. Now, whether they did or not, they were at least willing. So it kept him having the conversation, and it would look something like this. So, the only reason somebody has a chicken list now, Rick, and I don't care who they are, we all have them, I have them. The only reason people have a chicken list now is because, or the person they're afraid to talk to, is because they're afraid the person's going to tell them no. I mean, they just are. Well, if you go to somebody you know right now who's a business owner or whatever, instead of asking them for the service, ask them who they know and would they be willing to help you. It just lightens the burden. It's much easier to have those conversations. And, if you're somebody that really wants to build a large book, you get yourself create an environment over the next 12 months, and this is literally what happened for Steve. He got so many people that were willing to help him, refer him business, who never did business with him themselves because they didn't have the money or for whatever reason. He had so many people that within 5 months, he had to stop the cold calling and the asking for himself because he had a list of about 67 or 68 different people that he got in a routine, which I helped him get into, that he would every once in a while he'd call them up and ask them, hey, who do you know? Did you think of anybody? What about this? What about that? And he had so much referral business it took him into the top 11 of that organization. And you know what, Rick? He's in a product, a service that is just the financial services world, brutal, and he had huge success. As our BidPoint folks go out there and really start working a networking referral environment around what we do, I mean, the sky is the limit. Jim was just talking on a call. One of our field agents found one client. That one client makes them over $5,000 a month. Jim's actually going to this client's office in Wisconsin. And, I mean, the potentials here are just amazing.
And going to multiply that number probably, right?
Going to multiply the number. Going up specifically to solidify our 4-year relationship, because they've been renewing over and over, with natural gas and electricity. And then, of course, he's just going to say, oh, yeah, by the way, here's a new vertical we have. Happens to be trash and recycling. I'm assuming you guys, as a paper organization, have a little bit of recycling you have some needs for. He's just going to expand that vertical. So for people listening to this call today who say, you know what, who do I talk to? What do I say? I'm afraid to say it. I don't know anybody that owns a business. That's perfect. You don't have to know anybody that owns a business. But everybody you know, and honestly, if you've been on an island for the past 50 years and you don't have a list of, you don't have a list of friends, this might not be your business. It might not be. But that's just not the case, for 99.9. Anybody who's joined BidPoint, I guarantee you right now, they could write a list of 100 people. And the reason they're afraid to write that list, Rick, is because they're thinking like the past, we as their support want them to take those 100 people and go pitch them on what we do. Well, we don't. What we really want, we want those 100 friends or 50 or 20 friends of yours to help you build a business. And ask yourself the question, if you're listening to this call right now, if one of your friends came to you and said, hey, look, I just started a new pizza shop right down the street. Why don't you come visit me sometime? Do you mind telling somebody about my pizza shop? What would you say? No, I'm not going to come to your pizza shop. I'm going to the Pizza Hut next to you? Of course you're not. You're going to go to the guy's pizza shop, right? Well, it's the same thing here. You get a field agent who's got 50 friends, and just go out to your sphere and start asking that question. Who do you know who might be interested? Who do you know that owns a business? Those 50 friends could turn into 1,000 customers. And let's just say, 20% of them say yes, 80% say no. You have any idea how much money, Rick, 200 customer book would pay in your business? They wouldn't be working. They wouldn't have to get a 201st, that's for sure.
That's right.
So
that's right.
It's doable, and we've scratched the surface. We've barely scratched the surface. So it's exciting.
Well, and even as you mention it further, even in a roundabout way, I mean that person became a part of your sales organization really through networking efforts like we're describing. So
100%.
Yeah, and it will. That's the other thing about it too, is because as you develop deeper relationships, it's not hit and run. You're developing a new sphere of influence, and
right.
and then that takes on layers, and some of those people will not just lead you to clients, but also lead you to people that decide to join you, and want to create their own, long money income opportunity themselves. So you and I have seen it. We probably started working in networking groups ourselves more than 20 years ago.
Sure.
And think about the hundreds and hundreds of people we've met. But the great thing about a business like this is you meet those hundreds and hundreds of people, but they stay with you because, energy clients aren't going to go away. Waste and recycling clients are the same way. Anything we do is going to be about long-term residual income and stacking that income and putting those clients under contract. And it's not necessarily instant gratification, but it does move pretty quickly. And
yes.
And you're in profit pretty quickly too if you treat it like a business.
Yes.
So,
and I can comment to that. And let me comment to that real quickly, Rick. The whole idea of instant gratification is what the MLM business to consumer model focused on. And we're not that. If somebody is going to compare us business to business, what our business is and what BIDPOINT is it needs to be compared to like a Keller Williams empire of realtors out there, And I've said this to a lot of different people, and I've said it to someone just not long ago. I said, you know what? If it was right now, it's first days of end of January, 1st of February. If somebody came up to you and said, you know what, Joe or John, I've got $3 million. I'm getting ready to retire this fall, okay? And my pension is worth $3 million. Do you mind come next August to work with me and do something with my $3 million? I got to get it out of my company, and I need to put it and invest it somewhere else. Would you come work with me to do that $3 million? If you're a financial planner, you just had a heyday, because in August, which happens to be 6 or 7 months out, you're going to have a $3 million client that you'll make a couple bucks on. Well, Rick, energy and what we're doing here, it's the same mindset. If that same gentleman said to a realtor, you know what, I'm downsizing come August. I know it's only February, but I want to tell you about it. I've got a $500,000 house I'm going to downsize to a $200,000 house. Would you help me in August sell my $500 and buy a $200? Would you help me do that? A realtor that got that type of lead here in February for August, they've made their month. They've made their month. And why is that? Because the professionals in those industries set the expectation for the new person as honest and real and long-term business career opportunity. And that's what BIDPOINT offers to people, an honest, real, long-term business opportunity for people. And, Rick, we talk about it all the time. The types of individuals that come here see it and have just stellar business backgrounds is quite extreme. Why? Because this is something, regardless of what you've done in the past, when you really look at the nuts and bolts of this business up, from the day one to the long term of whatever that might look like, the bottom line, and I don't care who you are, we talk about long term because we came from an industry where the conversation was always, how fast can you make $1,000? And they celebrated everybody that came in and blew the doors off of some simple little bonus and made $1,000 in day 30. But they never talked about day 31. Well, what we talk about is not how fast can you make $1,000, but how long can you keep it once you've got it, once you've made it. And I'm here to tell you, you already, and we talk about this, we're setting records with BIDPOINT, and you started it in the late fall, then Thanksgiving, then Christmas, then New Year's, and you already have people on the road to making multiple thousands of dollars a month. I know you're going to announce some of those names today, but they're on that road. They just keep the same pace. Hard telling where they are 36 months from today. I mean, they could be 6 figures plus. And that's what I love about this. It's just real, and that's why we sleep well at night. Bottom line. So, Rick, thanks for having me on the call. Anything I can ever do to help anybody listening?
Let me know. It's just great. It's just great stuff, and I know because we've been around this, and it was the networking was working, but not until we came across the industries we're working in now could we really just build it and truly multiply it and truly create that residual income. Towards that end, I want to congratulate Mike McLean in Pennsylvania, Randy Hall and Mike Moore, both of Georgia. And I can't release the person's name in Ohio, but I can tell you that that this is a person who put a very large manufacturing plant on as his first client. All of these people have achieved the 60% payout level with us in BIDPOINT. That's basically been one every single month since we really started moving. We're excited about that. All generating, starting to generate significant income because they've written at least 3 qualified deals or one deal over $5,000 in monthly energy spend. And the one deal that's on the books, I can say, is one in excess of that. That person's already put themselves in a position to earn a comma check every month off just one client. So what we're talking about here is already coming to fruition, and we're excited about the future for everyone listening today and everyone that will listen to this call in the future, and just excited about everything we've talked about from the foundation stages of both Avion and then by extension BIDPOINT and what's happening now. So, Joe Miniga, I want to thank you for being on the call today.
Absolutely.
Just love what's going on here. Appreciate the vision and the tenacity that it took to get it to this point. And our intention is to multiply it from here. So thank you again, and thanks to everybody out there in the BIDPOINT Nation. And we'll be talking soon, and we'll have this message available to recording shortly too. Thanks, everybody. Have an awesome day.